Now, an hour of clarity for exhausted people of our nation mired in toxic partisanship. Left versus right, us versus them. While we pay to keep our politicians fighting, how do we, the people, rise up and solve the great challenges of our time? We do it by embracing freedom and liberty. There may be no such thing as a free lunch, but this hour is as close as it gets. Welcome to A Free Solution.
All right, welcome to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, your host today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
Yeah, buddy, I'm here.
Yeah.
Fresh off the road from a brutal, hot, hard week that proves that global warming, we need to stop driving cars. That's it. If it's going to keep being this hot, nobody should be allowed to drive a car. No.
Are flying cars allowed? Is that?
Yeah, that's different. That's
yeah,
different.
okay. So you're not driving, you're flying. Then that's okay.
That's different. I just thought of something that I knew we had to talk about.
Are we getting derailed? All right. We're like,
I know. Should I drop it on you? Or should I? I'm going to say
go. No, go ahead. You can. You brought it up.
Okay. This is where we're going to prove our libertarian creds right now, bro. Like, should people be able to buy Narcan from a vending machine by the side of the road? And I'm not just going to go with screw the roads, okay? There's actually something's going on here locally.
Narcan, yeah, 100%, because Narcan is used to, save people who are, going into an overdose, right? Like that should be available all over the place. It's becoming a thing in Rochester too. They're building these little boxes that have them.
Yeah, the vending machine in Oneonta, New York, with Narcan right in it. It's
sad that it's necessary, but it should be legal to do that.
It should be legal to provide someone with an antidote to poisoning themselves. I agree with that premise. And look, guys, the fentanyl is dangerous. You know what where it came from? The war on drugs, man, because it's easier to smuggle, it's more potent, and they can get more profit off of it. Prohibition does not work. But vending machines, Narcan, at least they're not just, I don't know. I guess there's jokes I want to make, but I also want to be aware and cognizant that people struggle with addiction. It's a real thing. It's really sad. And so, like, I don't know if the jokes work, so I got to be careful. That's it. Because I don't want to feel bad about myself, I guess.
But yeah, and hey, Shelly, thanks for listening today. Shelly says you can go to any pharmacy and get trained to use Narcan properly. Yeah, no, it's something, and I know a bunch of folks who have.
The government response to COVID destroyed a lot of people's lives. Like, I mean, it's not surprising that heavy duty drug use is on an uptick. I did listen to a guy on Fox News telling everybody that it was because of marijuana, which it hurt my brain to hear that. Okay. Like, marijuana is a gateway drug. That's why fentanyl. And I'm like, no.
Someone taking a rest from like the immigrant argument.
They've been pretty anti-immigrant on Fox News this week. I'll be honest with you. I am, and Kevin, you know this, but I'm not like pro open borders, but like we need a better immigration system because these jokers and clowns use it to manipulate us constantly. They're awful. They're awful human beings, man, for doing it over and over and over again and using the same things over and over and over again. They're horrible people.
Yeah, that's what it is. And, Democrats and Republicans both do it. They both have, strict immigration policy, and then they fight over it, fundraise over it, blah, blah, blah. And, and one of the things is that it becomes so difficult sometimes that like bad people who, profit from, all sorts of nefarious activities can also profit from sneaking people into the country. And there's a lot of economic incentive for you to find ways to do that when it's nearly impossible for someone to come in legally.
It takes right?
so long. It takes so much money.
And the people that are coming in are doing jobs that are, it's tough to get people to do. Okay. And the only way to get them to do it is to have them in here as some sort of quasi-legal exploitation kind of narrative, right? Like it's garbage. And you know what's even worse? The visa system is busted, bro. Like the agricultural visas that get handed out. A guy or a girl can be working on a farm for 6 months, get fired, and now all of a sudden they're an illegal immigrant. That's nonsense. Okay, that's exploitation. We're already paying more for
that's
food.
that's one of those things that stinks, right? Like if you have one of those visas where it's like if you lose your job, you have little to zero time to find something. Like what if you're in a lease, right? Like, okay, man, I got an apartment that has 6 more months on it. Like, what are you gonna do? Most times people will just be like, well, I'm just gonna hang out and hope I don't get caught. You know, that's how it ends up going.
Eric Adams, the mayor of New York City, is going to start bulldozing illegal immigrants, though. That's what I heard.
Just like the dirt bikes.
Yeah, they're illegal. So if they're illegal, they're illegal. That's it. That was one of the biggest arguments. People were saying those things are illegal. I'm like, you stole people's property. Like you can't just bulldoze it into the ground. And they're like, yes, we can. They're illegal. So
Goofy. All right. So we're on our like what 5th topic already?
We're know, bro. I'm sorry.
6 minutes in, 5 minutes in.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's gonna be one of those shows. All right, buckle up, folks.
Yeah, buckle up.
So maybe we should talk about a couple of the things we actually intend to talk about.
Yeah.
First of all, like interesting breaking news from around here in the Rochester area. Someone tried to stab the Republican candidate for governor. Someone tried to stab Lee Zeldin, I guess. He's fine. He didn't get hurt.
Good.
Is that out in Fairport near me? But yeah, I'm like, I see the picture and I'm like, all right, I know exactly what Legion that's at, and I recognize like 10 of the Republicans in that picture. A couple of them have been on the show, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's the news incident that's in Fairport.
That is certainly unfortunate. I certainly don't want I don't want Lee Zeldin stabbed. People got mad at me this week though, Kevin.
Yeah.
Because I'm not supporting Lee Zeldin.
Well, that'll happen. I am expecting a phone call like at least one show every week where someone tells me, I'm supporting Kathy Hochul because I don't want to vote for Lee Zeldin. I want to vote for Larry Sharp instead.
Vote red or we're all dead. I don't know. I think that should be a campaign slogan. It just
probably is.
And look, man, the Zeldin thing, he's exactly what I hate about politics, right? He has millions and millions of dollars from participating in the sale of regulations. He was a fan of Cuomo. He was friendly with Cuomo. He debatably, he voted for funding red flag law enforcement. I still don't want the guy stabbed, and I don't want him suffering violence. And I want him to make points about freedom that everybody agrees with that we all like to hear. But so far, I haven't seen anything from him that I like at all. Yeah,
no. So one of these times, I'm going to I'm gonna invite him on and/or do a deep dive into his policies because again, there's a couple things I agree with, but like, it's probably like 50-50 at this point. And I always think of like Larry's like 80-20 rule. You agree with him 80%. Like, almost everything I agree with Larry on. Maybe a couple things we don't agree on, but for the most part, we're on the same page.
Yeah.
And so
I didn't dislike Astorino, man. Like I'd make wisecracks on his page and he'd answer me, or one of his staffers would answer me. And look, he's an upstate guy. And I think that I think that's an issue for a lot of people. We feel as though downstate doesn't understand.
Is he? When he Westchester? No,
I know.
Upstate. Upstate guy. Where do you think upstate starts?
Did I just call him an upstate guy?
Yeah, you did.
He
Mark Molinaro. Like I feel like you can make a little bit of a better argument for that guy, the last Republican candidate, because he was in Dutchess County, and that's where the MTA line like ends there. But I think if you have an MTA line running through your county, you are not upstate. Like it doesn't count.
That's a fair criticism. That is. He still said he was an upstate guy. That's what he said. And
why people from Westchester think they're upstate. Real New York City mentality.
Oh, I'll tell you what. I'm sorry, but New York City mentality hurts me a little bit. I feel bad. In case there's people from New York City listening.
Yeah, I know.
It's a problem, guys.
It's fine. It's it's not positive. Just where they define upstate. That's I love my friends from New York City. Larry Sharp is from New York City. It's great. They operate very differently.
John and he's from New York City.
Yeah.
So,
But speaking of Lee Zeldin, though, it's interesting. He was one of the Republicans. It looks like he actually voted for a repeal of the Defense of Marriage Act. Like, it's called the Respect for Marriage Act. So this is a bill in Congress that would repeal the Defense of Marriage Act. And that's kind of the general gist of what it does. It would require states to recognize marriages that are done in other states. And what the Defense of Marriage Act does now, which is still a law, is passed in 1996, is it doesn't allow for federal recognition of gay marriage. So that this repeals that, and it it says, like, if you're in a state that doesn't recognize gay marriage, if anyone were to do that again, which right now Obergefell hasn't been overturned. People are just worried because Clarence Thomas wrote in that opinion that
we should revisit these things.
Yeah, we should revisit that, the interracial marriage case, the contraception case. So that's all it does, is it does that thing. But he was one of the ones who voted for it. Several of the Republican delegation ended up voting for it in New York, but it was like 47 out of 200 something Republicans ended up voting for this thing.
Close to 200. I think it's 190 something, but yeah. And first of all, I've gotten to the point where, why does government get involved in what marriage is and what marriage isn't? Like, that's an issue where there should be a separation of church and state. That's an issue of we would be better off if there was a separation of church and state. And look, guys, I've been married a couple times. If gay people want to get married, good luck. Sometimes it's rough.
Yeah. No, just gay marriage is fine. Gay divorce, though, I'm gonna judge you. That's
divorce is rough. All right, and marriage leads to divorce about 51% of the time. That's a reality. And so, if people want to have rights to each other, it's a contract, right? It's not.
Yeah. So like one of the arguments that people are giving for voting against this bill, right? Folks like Marco Rubio, because the Senate version hasn't passed yet, right? Marco Rubio saying he ain't going to do this because this is a states' rights issue. A few other members of Congress saying, like, this isn't really something for the federal government to do. Kind of the only. Like, part of me like wants to agree with that. Like, okay, like it's weird that the federal government would define and intervene in this particular case, except for two things. My two counter arguments to that are, like, one, the Defense of Marriage Act, which is already the law, already does interfere with marriage. It explicitly prohibits the federal government from recognizing gay marriage, which can create problems, right? It's
sure,
like, if you need the federal government to recognize that marriage for like veteran benefits or something, like I think now, like, it kind of does anyway. Like, it's
they found workarounds, I think. Right?
Yeah, but but that it's a problem that there's still this law in the book that could create issues, in certain situations, depending on how the administration chooses to interpret or allow for workarounds in the law, right? So again, this is already government interfering in marriage, something that should be something that's between individuals.
Look, it's a contract between two people. The only part of the government is to defend one of those people from being oppressed by the other one. That's the only part the government should play in it. Other than that, whatever they want to come up with is whatever they want to come up with. That's I think the libertarian philosophy. I think that conservatives should think like that. I get that Republicans and Democrats want us all angry and sniping at each other, and they use. That is always very frustrating to me. I go off on this tangent, right? They use this stuff and they repeat it and they recycle it. And it drives me nuts. We never settle anything, man. Never. We never.
I thought this was settled. I think everyone thought it was settled. And we're like, all right, I guess maybe it's not now.
I know. It was. That's a good point, because it was settled in my mind. And now people seem to be upset about it again. And
like, every once in a while I'd hear it. Like, I had like assembly candidates I talked to, and they're like, yeah, like, despite the Supreme Court's unfair decision, I want to ban gay marriage in New York. I'm like, what? Why? Why? And this is like only a few years ago. What? I don't know, man. Like, it just kind of just let people do their thing. They're not hurting you.
I don't. So I think it's a religious prescription that they feel as though religion doesn't allow gays to get married, so therefore it's an abomination to God. That part, I don't know if I'm saying it right. If there's a religious person out there that wants to explain it to me, I'm more than happy to listen.
A long time ago, I used to like think the other way, and the way some folks think about it, right, is that okay, if the state is allowing a particular activity, they are therefore endorsing that activity, and you have something like like the clerk issue, right? Like is a or a baker issue or whatever, right? Like is the person like the clerk participating in facilitating someone else's sin and therefore sinning themselves by signing off on this marriage certificate,
which actually was a persuasive argument to me. It was not necessarily an argument that the people who wanted to get married couldn't end up married. The person that said, hey, my religious beliefs really don't allow me to do this, I can't sign it. It just seems like there would be a very simple workaround to that as well. Okay, don't sign it. So this person can sign it instead of you, or a judge can sign it.
Well, so is this so like that's kind of what ended up happening in the town where I went to college, right? In this town, there was a clerk who didn't want to do that, and she was going to. And people may freaked out because this is a college town. People freaked out about. There's a village within the town. People freaked out and they're like, "What? Why wouldn't you do this? Like, we support the right of our neighbors to get married." Blah blah blah. And then she's like, "Well, I don't want to do it. My deputy clerk is willing to do that though, and that's fine by me."
Yeah, that's what I remember.
But there was a guy like who was a friend of mine. I ended up helping his campaign too. He's like, no, that still stinks. I'm going to run against you for that purpose. He ended up losing. He ended up getting his butt kicked, though, because, in part, the town is like, well, she's been our clerk forever, and she does a really good job at a lot of things, and people can still get married, so that seems fine. Like you're just jumping in on this one issue, but you're not otherwise qualified.
Right.
So, yeah, complications of like small town politics. Again, that was one of the first like campaigns I worked on. Maybe a second, but
now you campaigned for. Are you saying you campaigned for a guy that was against gay marriage?
No, he was for gay marriage. So he wanted to go and he wanted to sign the certificates and was running on the platform of like, hey, I'm gonna if someone comes to me and wants to get married, like my office will sign this.
Yeah, there's some popping comments about this.
Yeah. A bunch, and we'll read this comment from Patty too. So Patty on Facebook says, I've known couples who were not married and lost the right to be with their partner at death because of other family members, both gay and straight couples. Yeah, it's a thing. Again, it's it's a tough thing, and I know friends like who have been together for like many years, have bought a house together. Some cases had kids together, and then they kind of realize, like 20 years in, they're like, oh, like we should probably get a contract for this because like it creates some problems with insurances, with schools, with medical issues if you're not married. And that's again, and what it should be is that, and they're like, why do I and it's funny, like I sort of said this like because my wife and I had like been together for several years and like, all right, I guess we need the government stamp of approval now, like just because it creates problems if we don't have that. And so we're like, all right, yeah, we'll get government permission to like give their not stamp of approval, but like contract for our love.
Yeah. So Shelley says this, Kevin, maybe you're a history buff. So the state requires that the church needs a state license to oversee a wedding. Marriage licenses aren't legal constitutionally, and they were used to prevent interracial marriage. What is that? Let's fact check that with you, Kevin.
Yeah,
Wilson.
I mean, it all depends on like your definition of like marriage, right? Like if you're if marriage is like the contract between you, your spouse, and God, like that's what that is, right? But Shelley's like right in the sense of like to get the contract with enforceable rights that provides some additional and more immediate rights to beyond like like common law marriages and domestic partnerships and stuff like that, or like a custom contract that you make up. The state could just say, no, we're not going to do this for certain people. We set the criteria. And that's kind of why I don't, again, don't always like the states' rights thing. Again, states don't have rights, they have powers. It is kind of legitimate that they have powers to do and administer certain things, marriage certificates being one of them, but it doesn't necessarily make that the right thing to do to prevent two consenting adults, or I'll say something, any number of consenting adults from entering like contracts. Like, again,
right.
if that's your thing, like, and you want to make a contract to do it, like, that is not my business as long as it's consenting adults involved. And a lot of states, they're a little bit even gross on the consenting adult bit.
True.
New York State until recently included too, and I was shocked to see one of the local like radio hosts being like, "Oh man, I can't believe we're raising the marriage age from like 14 with parental permission in New York." I'm like, wait,
why can't you believe that?
Yeah, no, like that seems that is a good move, man. Like,
what's wrong with that?
I'm okay with that. Like, adults, like you got to be an adult.
You got to be an adult.
That if you need a parental permission slip for it, like, I'm okay with the states like saying you can't do that.
Do you remember the time when they were talking about lowering, and it's kind of gone by the wayside, but they were talking about lowering the age of voting to 16, and it was like that. What in the world are you guys thinking, man? Like, they can't have a beer, they can't drive a car, but they could vote? Like, shouldn't you have to have some sense of adulthood, some sense of adult responsibilities to vote?
Bro, there are 30-year-olds without an adult sense of responsibilities.
I knew that was a trap there. I knew it.
No, it's fine. I kind of generally agree with you. Like, I'm fine with
your point is well taken.
Yeah, but so they give you a hard time about it. Well, social contract, man. Facebook user says government has you in contract from the day your birth certificate is printed. I mean, like, yes and no, right? Like, it's one of those things. Right. Like, there's the social contract thing. Like, there's no like legal obligation anywhere other than the fact that if you're born here, you're expected to follow the laws in the geographical and cosmological accent of the place of your birth. So, for better or worse, that's how it is.
Yeah, there's certain rights with a U.S. birth certificate that maybe other people don't have. So there's rights and privileges as well as the contract with the government, which is to pay taxes until you die and all that stuff. So,
I did not sign a social contract, Tim, and they don't give me my rights when I get my birth certificate. I already have them. They don't give me nothing.
Except
for roads, they give me that. But
I hope I didn't mislead anybody, because that's exactly what I think. I mean, you still have some parental supervision that you need. Like, I don't want my 5-year-old buying weaponry from a vending machine at the side of the road. I don't want them experimenting with drugs. I want the right to supervise them.
There's not a real libertarian.
I know. But sometimes I'm not. Sometimes there's real libertarian.
Folks watch the show know I'm teasing Tim about this. But like, do you remember the 2016 Libertarian Party like presidential debate?
Do not.
I think there's. Again, I love my libertarian friends, but like there's one point in time where Austin Peterson was like, no, I don't think children should be able to legally buy heroin. And he got booed.
Oh, yeah. Libertarian purists have done more to wreck this party than like anybody else. I can occasionally a debate point comes up and the pure libertarian philosopher wants to tell me, let's see. Oh, it was about the mask and the vaccine thing. And they were like, well, your employer has whatever rights they have because this is a contract. And I'm like, but they're changing the contract in the middle of it. And they're like, well, that's just the way that the contract reads. And I'm like, something about that doesn't quite meet up with how I understand my reality. A contract is a contract. If I've been an employee and all of a sudden you hit me with a new requirement, should you be able to just fire me? Or should I be able to sue you for changing my requirements if you do fire me? Something about that never sat right with me.
Well, so it depends on what your contract is and if you have an actual contract, because in New York State, you can be an at-will employee And a lot of employment agreements will say, like, we can change this for whatever reason, with or without notice, and we can fire you with or without reason.
Did anybody sign any employment agreement? I've never signed an employment agreement. I'd be like, what is this? Get it away from me. Pay me my money. That's it. I'll show up. You pay me. That's our agreement.
Gotta follow the rules, Tim.
I don't need no stinking rules.
But I've signed several employment agreements, and I've only really fought one of them because it had a bad non-compete clause in it. It's like, oh yeah, you can't like talk to anyone that we've ever talked to indefinitely. And I'm like, nah, that's not legal or enforceable, and I'm not signing that.
Yeah. And what happened? Did you get the job?
Yeah. I mean, like they weren't, the employer was not in a position to say no. So
that's nice.
We got that changed.
That's a good place to be right there. I like that.
But yeah, no, it's
that was a good one. I wanted to get that comment.
Says comment on Facebook says marriage is a contract between consenting adults, clergy, judges, and or guests are witnesses to a contract. Yeah, it's kind of it. It's they're just saying, yep, I saw that these two people wanted to enter this contract, and they made it official. And so if you haven't done a wedding while too, like, and then the witnesses, like when you actually get married, like you get the license, you sign all the stuff, and then that's given to the person officiating the ceremony, and then the witnesses like sign that at the ceremony to say, yes, I indeed saw those two people say that they want to get married. That's
those crazy fools.
Yeah.
Just kidding. I'm married now, and I love my wife, but I've been married before, and it was not as cool.
It happens, right? That's why, like, right to marriage is important, right to divorce support, which didn't always used to be a thing. It used to be very difficult for you to also get out of that contract, downright impossible in some situations. And that's a good thing for individuals to be able to say, nope, this doesn't work anymore. I need to be able to get out of my contract, get out of my marriage. So it is. And
divorce is a very profitable industry in our society. It's profitable for lawyers. It changes the dynamics of everything, man. Divorce is awful, but sometimes being married is more awful.
That's what it is. Again, I'm happily married, but I know some friends who are just like, we are much better after this. The kids are in a better situation after this, and
you're opening up the door for me to start talking about parental rights and shared custody, Kevin. I'm not sure we want to go down that wormhole.
We could.
Okay.
Why not? Like, this show of tangents. This is
the profit from divorce comes from basically a predisposition to support one. How do I say it correctly? Well, there's no politically correct way to say it. I think that a lot of people have been through the absolute ringer when it comes to divorce. There's a way that they divide assets, and there's a way that they use your children to make the state money, and there's a way that they subjugate one party to the other party, and it's bad for children. And they do it basically because it props up a system. Like, it drives me crazy.
I mean, some situations it ends up being costly, ends up being emotionally damaging, and I definitely heard stories about people who got a raw deal, particularly, fathers who've been in that situation, and they don't know, they're not prepared to like go through that system and like
they don't
advocate effectively for their position, or have a lawyer advocate effectively for their position. And again, unfortunately, that's a situation that stinks. And
it happens all too often. I think that if we and states are moving towards it, but of course, New York State is ridiculously behind the curve, that where the presumption of shared custody is where it starts. So you can get a divorce and not lose access to your kids. And believe me, one parent over the other, that's where the accusations fly. That's where the courts get involved. And that's where people get subjugated to a system that ruins their life. Okay, that's a reality. So if we had this presumption of shared custody, it would be at least a step in the right direction. I can still foresee some problems with it, but so right now, let's say 40% of all divorces end acrimoniously with a huge fight that wastes time, money, and energy. I think that number would drop significantly. I think people would just be like, yeah, let's not fight. Let's see you later. Let's work this out. Let's share the kids. Things are good.
Maybe. And I'm gonna read this comment from Facebook. I do want to comment on it just because I've seen some situations like where it does make sense for one parent to get custody. But Daniel on Facebook says, if you don't have the rights to your own child, do you have any rights at all? Seems essential to the pursuit of happiness. Yeah, most of the time, yeah, and most of the time, most parents want to like be able to see their kid, want to be able to continue a relationship with them. So every once in a while, I have seen some situations where one parent is genuinely bad, abusive, neglectful, and sometimes like you get a situation where and where one of the parents, because of a presumption about who the primary caretaker is or ought to be, the system doesn't make the right decision about how the kid
I was going to work in a snide comment, and lots of times the failing parent is the one that ends up with the kids because that's the system that we support. That's the adversarial process of bullshit that we support. And I don't support it. I support the concept of shared custody right from the get-go. You guys can argue a little bit about money, but other than that, you're sharing your kids, and that's the end of it.
Most of the time, I think you're generally right. It's just that's there's a couple of outliers to that situation where
sure
really like one parent is not ready or not able to properly care for their child. That's really sad when that case happens. But
it becomes a tool and a weapon that gets used to prove everything that they said bad. It also supports this cult of victimization that we have going on in our society. All of these things, and lawyers are very proactively like ready to defend females, the person that they perceive to have less power in the relationship. And I just don't, it doesn't meet up with my reality. It doesn't meet up with my experience. And look, I'm happy and successful, at least in part because my exes were decent human beings and decided at some point not to belabor these things forever. And we shared our kids, and my kids turned out pretty good. So that's better.
That's great. And that's the ideal, semi-ideal situation, right? Obviously, the divorce not great, but
right. I get it. It's a bad system, and we don't fight it effectively.
Yeah, and sounds like Patty had a similar experience with her ex in court, and watched some bad behavior from other folks, but looks like they were able to work it out. So yeah, that's a good thing to do.
Yeah, I do. I'm sure the stresses that our system puts on people, there's going to be. I've had conversations, guys. I'm going to tell you right now, none of you, when you're arguing, are persuasive, and none of you understand what evidence is. Like, okay, you're not going to get to go to court and say she did this, she did that, she does this, she does that. You have to have dates and times. You have to have real things, and you can't just be mad at her. Or guess who ends up looking bad? It's you. Okay, she can. I hate to tell you this, but she can have another boyfriend as long as she's not having another boyfriend in front of the children. That is none of the court's business. Okay, it's your relationship is dissolving. The kids are a separate issue. And guys get so mad they lose track of what's actually important, and they think they're going to be able to prove to a court that their ex-wife is of ill repute because she's seeing someone else, and that's not how it works. I hate to tell you that.
They're allowed to do that.
But it is a profit-based system. There's like $1 trillion a year spent in the family court system. It's amazing how much money gets spent there.
No. So anyway, I do want to kind of go back to like the kind of topic of this. Like, does Congress need to like codify our rights too? Because the other one that they're going to do is like a contraception bill too, saying like you have a right to contraception. Which that one that one's a little bit different in my mind in the sense that like I sort of like the outcome. I'm not sure I like the mechanism, because the outcome or the mechanism for the respect for marriage bill is we're going to repeal these prohibitions that we had previously placed on the federal government recognizing marriage and states recognizing marriage. And that is well within like the interstate commerce clause to say you have to recognize these like valid contracts in other states, right? Like that's
right.
That's within the purview of the government. The contraceptive bill, again, not that I'm against the outcome, but you have a right to use contraception is it's interesting to come at from a federal level, in the sense that I kind of feel like that might already be one of those rights that we already have, but isn't explicitly laid out in the Constitution. And I don't know that we need to put that in its own bill. But I don't know. How do you feel, you feel about that? Yeah, I mean, that's like, a bit like of libertarian, like, well, listen.
Does the government get to codify our rights, or do we have those rights? And so the crass thoughts went through my head when you were talking about it, and I lost track. Sorry. I'll be perfectly honest with you. It's just like, should the government be able to say you can't take contraception? And so
at some point in time, they did. That's why the Griswold v. Connecticut case was there, and one of the other cases that Clarence Thomas brought up as like, well, these rights established in cases like Griswold v. Connecticut, Loving v. Virginia, Oberfell, Roe v. Wade, etc., were not rights delineated in the Constitution. Therefore, they're not rights at all. And so this bill is saying, well, we're just saying on the federal legislative level, you have this right, and you can't punish doctors for prescribing contraception and punish people for consuming contraception, because there was a point in time back prior to the 50s, prior to the Griswold case, where states like Connecticut could just say, even if you're married, you can't get contraception. That is not allowed. We're going to
see. I'm learning stuff. I didn't realize that.
And then the court said, no, if you don't have a right to privacy in your own bedroom, then what right to privacy do you have at all?
Well,
yes, you should be able to get a prescription for contraception.
True.
For anyone, but like, especially if you're married, like you just want to control the level and number of birth of kids.
You should have some rights to that for sure.
Yeah.
I don't know. The government says it wants to be out of the bedroom, and then they start issuing edicts and directives on how to behave if you suspect you've been exposed to monkeypox, and the government's right there in your bedroom telling you what to do. So I get a little confused. Like, should the government be in the bedroom, or shouldn't the government be in the bedroom? And when I saw their monkeypox tweet, I'm like,
wait, which monkeypox tweet is this?
Oh, let me see if I can find
it. Is it the CDC one, or
and it also this tweet also went around, something similar went around during COVID. Okay, and hopefully I can pull it up here pretty quick for everybody.
I know, like the government had a very gross set of tweets, like how to have safe sex with when there's a pandemic, and they had some odd suggestions.
I'm going to do a screen share if I can figure that out. Bear with me. So it's very similar to that, right? It's technically along that lines.
And while you do that, Gene says rights are not defined by the Constitution. The Constitution exists to protect inalienable rights. And in fact, I'll go a step further. The Constitution is there to either say the government has an obligation to protect those rights, or they are restricted from violating those rights. So 100%.
I agree, and I agree with it on so many things. There's always that issue when it comes to abortion that I get a little bit caught up in when is an abortion a human being, but I still don't want abortion to go away or become prohibited. It's just at some point I want that question answered. I want an uncomfortable agreement by everyone in society that this is when we say we can't do it. That's what I want.
I don't think that's going to happen. But I mean, the closest you get to that was like the Casey case, which said like the point of fetal viability at like 25 weeks. That was That was what that thing did.
I thought that was reasonable. So here's from the New York City Department of Health, guys. They're on top of it. Are they staying out of your bedroom, or they just making some suggestions? I don't know. If you or your partner think you might have monkeypox, do not have sex or close physical contact. Avoid kissing and sharing saliva. Instead, have virtual sex. Masturbate. Okay. All right. Masturbate together at a distance without touching each other. I mean,
like so I think it might have been the New York City Department of Health that did the same thing during COVID, and it was very similar advice. Some of it involving like physical barriers too. Like it was awkward coming from them. But yeah, like
it's awkward.
Monkeypox mostly spreads right now when you have like skin to skin contact or like very close physical contact. It's not airborne in the same way that COVID is.
Right.
You have like
tiny little particles.
Yeah. Usually if you're contagious, you have sores on your body. And so the best way to do that is if you have sores all over your body that could be monkeypox, don't be naked with someone. That's generally good advice, but especially good advice when monkeypox seems to be spreading. The first case was in Monroe County last week.
Congratulations, Monroe County.
Yeah. No, it's no, I saw that and I'm like, oh man, gives me nostalgia for the first cases of COVID, which the first case of COVID was like the roommate of like a guy I was like hanging out with like the night before. And I was like, oh, all right.
Great.
Then I ended up not catching it, until for 2 years. But
well, I feel like I had it before it came around. Like people were describing this sickness that I had. So I doubted the official. As many of you know, I generally doubt the official government narrative on many things, but right from the start, I was pretty skeptical of the COVID narrative.
Could be. So I don't know. Like I'll say this, like I had some of the nastiest colds like over the last 2 years. Several of them were not COVID though.
Several of them were not COVID,
but some only one was COVID. Like COVID was like it was not the worst like sickness that I've had in the last 2 years. Like some of the things that my kid brought home from daycare, like I've never felt worse. I had like a fever for the first time like in my adult life, like coughing my lungs out for like weeks, and it wasn't COVID. I took like so many tests last December. It wasn't COVID, but then I felt like generally crappy with COVID, but it was not like even close to the worst cold I've had since my son was born.
That's amazing. I
know it's bad for other folks. I've had friends who are having like a rough time even with like long COVID and stuff, but yeah. Anyway,
I've had COVID a couple times.
Yeah. I did want to read this comment from Patty to you. Contraceptives should be over the counter for all consenting adults. It's not a thing. It's a thing that like Congress could do, different state governments could do, but like in most places you can't legally just like go to a pharmacist and be like, I would like birth control. But, obviously if you're someone where that would work for, but you can't just like go and say, I want to get, contraceptives. I want to get birth control pills. There are other contraceptives, condoms, whatever, but, and Plan B is available over counter, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, like birth control pills and a few other like contraceptive steps. You can't just like talk to a pharmacist and be like, all right, this is what I'm taking. This is, what it is. Right. And despite the fact that it's like relatively safe for almost anyone to do. And there's like a handful of conditions where a pharmacist would be like, nah, you need to talk to your doctor about this.
Mm-hmm.
It's not legal to do that. What do you think of that, Tim?
Well, the issue I think I guess I still fall back on certain myths, right? Like that a doctor needs to know their patient before they prescribe a specific type of birth control. Like, so I guess I buy into these hormone blocking birth controls and getting involved with your doctor and having them prescribed to you. Now, am I necessarily right about that? And am I skeptical of so much other stuff? Should I be skeptical of that? Perhaps, right? Because there's always this issue of control. Like, take it for a couple of days. If it doesn't work, go back and get a different kind, like. But what happens if it
it can, affect your body in
a mess
different ways, and you probably, should talk to a doctor, but like I don't think you should have to. And it also, bro, you're like, I take a bunch of ivermectin, like that I bought at a.
Oh yeah, I would take horse paste and I'd put it on my toast and I'd heat my toast up in the microwave and then I'd throw an egg on it and I'd be like, "This is an ivermectin."
Yeah, preventing COVID. It's
I ain't got no. And then I'd slather with some vitamin D and maybe some zinc, like salt. I'd shake zinc on it, zinc powder. That's why I never had COVID, except I did have COVID. So whatever.
Didn't work. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I generally think, though, you should be able to get, for most people, that's fine. Again, you're still doing a consultation with a pharmacist. Like, it should be as easy to buy like birth control pills as it is to buy like Sudafed. Easier than Sudafed, in fact.
Sudafed is hard to buy. I don't. Occasionally, I have really bad allergies, so you go in and you look for something like Sudafed-ish with ephedramine in.
Yeah, and that was the thing that helped the most when I had COVID was I took Sudafed and then like just cleared it up.
So the last time I had COVID, I took nasal spray with zinc in it, Vicks zinc, and it knocked it right out. I don't know why. Just it cleared my sinuses. I felt great. And then for about a day, I had a really bad fever, maybe 36 hours. And then after that, I was pretty much good to go.
Nice.
And look, the stories about people who are coming up in the comments about people who feel like or believe or have reason to believe or maybe even medical evidence that they had COVID before March 16th, before it was actually ever officially in the United States. I have a story of a local school where it closed down because no one was going to school for a week and everybody was getting tested for the flu and everybody was coming back negative. So, it certainly seems to me like it was here before. And I know there's evidence going back to November 19 that there was COVID. Antibodies were showing up in the blood supply. So,
I mean, maybe. Again, I honestly don't know that much about it. Like, so like could be, just not identified, but I don't know.
I had something I was going to pop off on and it slipped right out of my brain, Kevin.
Not going to just spat off without evidence.
We could talk about Tucker Carlson pretending that he's a libertarian for
is he doing that again?
Points.
Tell him not to do that.
I got stuck in a hotel room and the guys I ate dinner with got Fox News. No,
he's hated libertarian. Like he's talking about like how we're ruining the country. Like we're running the place and we're ruining it.
Well, but then he says both parties are garbage, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah.
Hey, well, listen, just because someone hates both the parties does not mean they're our friend. There's an important lesson for there's an important lesson for libertarians to run. Just because they don't like the same people does not mean that they are, going to advance like good policies.
I think I see what you're saying there. That makes sense to me. Now that you put it that way. But I did watch that Jesse Kelly guy. I watched that Jesse Kelly guy like could deliberately conflate anarchy with chaos. And I'm like, bro, you don't know what anarchy is. Like, stop.
Most people don't. I remember like the wildest thing when I was on like a local radio show, and it was like me and this other guy who was active in the party, a dude named Dan Cole, and like he was representing like the anarchist position, and the conservative who was the host of the show was just like clutching her pearls, like anarchy. And he's like, yeah, no, it just means like no state, but anarchy. Just like could not believe someone would possibly defend the concept of anarchy. He's just trying to patiently explain, like, look, man, look, a stateless society. This is what it does. Again, I'm not an anarchist, but he made a pretty good argument for like why we should eliminate the state altogether and why that shouldn't be shocking from someone who is libertarian.
All right, so anarchy. And like Kevin said, people don't know what anarchy is. Anarchy is a stateless existence where no one person has power over another person through the use of government force. That any kind of agreement you can make any kind of agreement you want. You basically are. I think one of the goals of anarchy is for everybody to be somewhat self-sufficient. They can interact, but like when we see anarchy and it's used as a substitute for chaos, and it's used by Antifa sometimes, so I get where people get it confused. I may not be the best one to explain the difference, but chaos is not anarchy.
Yeah, like it's I mean the association comes from like the anarchists who believe in a stateless communal society who could justify violence against the state, which is also violent. So that association with anarchy and chaos is, again, anarchy just means, no hierarchy, no rulers, right? And so it's
without archy.
Yeah, without archy, exactly. So again, that there's certain types of anarchists who can say like, well, the state uses violence, so if we use violence against the state, then that's totally justified, or violence against anyone who supports the state, which uses violence against us. Okay. Again, there's a whole bunch of different flavors of people who call themselves, anarchists, the folks who are like, well, we're going to be communal, and then you say, and we're going to distribute like wealth and resources, and you say, okay, well, who's going to do that? Well, we're going to do that as a community. Like, all right, well, what if someone refuses? Well, we're gonna get them to do that.
How?
The question's how.
I think as a libertarian, my stance is that the government has gotten way too big, way too powerful, way too reliant on manipulating our emotional state to maintain their power. And I think that there's just simply better solutions. And the solutions sound silly sometimes, like, or repetitive or cliche, right? Less regulations, less big businesses getting benefits from the government, like less credit farming, less this, less that. Yeah. I could see where that might scare some people, but I also think it would be a friendlier, better society.
No,
right?
I mean, you can pare down the government to what is the few services that are actually necessary, get good at those, and then also stop taking wealth from people and giving it to others who don't deserve it. Stop trying to micromanage every aspect of people's lives and the economy, and you'll get better results in the process.
I agree.
Yeah.
And most of the times when they take money from people and give it to other people, they're taking it from the upper middle class, giving it to the lower middle class, and then somehow the people with their hands in the big pig trough get more money than anybody else, right? Like the guys who are crafting legislation and buying regulations, they pay for these things. They know these regulations are going to benefit them.
Yeah, 100%. And we'll read this comment out loud too from Gene, who says, "Anarchy is no government, not no rules." So yeah, no, that's generally the idea, right? Like, think about this again. I'll make my pro anarchy argument before I make my, like, I'm not actually an anarchist argument. But think about this: like when you're a kid and you are playing, Foursquare with other kids, and this is before like the teachers enforce every single rule, ever. But you're just trying to like negotiate with the other kids there. How do you take turns? What are the playground rules? Because every playground might do something like a little bit different. And then you negotiate as a group how you decide you want to participate in that activity together, right? Like that is, in a way, anarchy.
That's
right?
That's a great description. That's really good.
Yeah. So like again, you're voluntarily participating. If someone decides that they're going to be, a jerk, you can say, okay, we're not playing with you anymore. Like, so you're not welcome to join our game. That's kind of the idea. If you have a teacher go and enforce that, then that's no longer anarchy. If the teacher's like, I'm the one.
Get rid of lunchtime aides. They're the ones that are making up these rules.
Yeah. And so like that's how we operate like most of our lives, right? Like again, most of our like voluntary interactions with one another, there's not a threat of violence if you break the rules, but there's a threat of social ostracization and people not wanting to do business with you, and a bunch of stuff. Again, stuff that falls into the realm of like, I do or don't want to do business with that person because they are decent, they are providing a lot of value, or I don't want to do business with someone because they're a jerk or they're unethical or whatever. That's what it is. Yeah, and Patty said sandbox rules. That's what it is. But again,
I love it.
We in our everyday life, we negotiate these situations, these rules without some threat of force being involved, right? And we could probably apply that to far more situations than we do now. And that's why, like, I kind of get like antsy when people start going down kind of that free speech, that free speech avenue where they're like, well, we can't allow someone to say this thing because, it's hurtful. Therefore, we should get the state involved with this. It's hurtful, it's hateful, whatever. There are already kind of social rules and social institutions to govern and punish people who are acting, like jerks. Like we already have that, and we don't need the state to come in and use violence. And whenever the state does that, they end up going way beyond the scope of the original problem you asked them to solve. Every single time. It's always going to happen.
Yeah. And they use, like, again, that emotional manipulation that I talk about all the time to, like, bastardize the whole process. They're like, we've got to protect people from white supremacy. And then under every rock and under every stone, they find a white supremacist, amazingly enough.
Yeah.
And they make laws that punish non-white supremacists for being either ignorant or silly.
Yeah. Again, there are social consequences to that, or with associating with, that kind of crowd. And again, the state should stay away from it, because again, if they start expanding their definition of who they get to punish for having bad ideas, it ends up getting really dangerous. Again, if it doesn't go beyond the point of hurting someone or taking their stuff, which is different. So again, I'm not an anarchist though. And if you want to understand why, I recommend reading Anarchy, State, and Utopia by Robert Nozick. And he talks about, how an anarchist society might be like governed, because there are some people who might want to hurt you and take action. And you might not always be in a position from a resource perspective to be able to defend yourself. So you might contract those services out, right? You might say, hey, I'm going to contract out some protective services, right? And at some point in time, if enough people contract with the same, protective services, you're going to end up with what looks like a state anyway.
Oh, so yeah. Or they become all of the power, and right.
Exactly. Or you try to be independent, and you have, a whole bunch of folks who are contracted with the same protective services, and they decide to not respect your rights and go after you. It's hard to have recourse again. And at that point in time, you kind of end up with a state anyway. I'm explaining it super briefly. If you haven't read Anarchy, State, and Utopia, or listened to it, I would recommend that. And Paula says, minarchist greater than anarchist. Yeah, generally agree. Good. No offense to my anarchist friends. I love you guys. I just
they're
I don't think it's going to work.
Purists, and the world needs philosophical purists, and that we need them to show us the way, and they keep us grounded. Like, okay, you're arguing for a state, and that's already worse than what we already have. And it's like you got to listen to people and get to where they're at. I like doing that.
Yeah.
Try anyway.
So
my local senator may have taken a big step towards more liberty. He went ahead. Rumor has it that he went ahead and built a big, huge building without a building permit. God bless him. I'm so proud of him. Not really, but it's kind of funny.
Yeah, sorry. I'm reading a comment. I got a comment from Rich. Well, he just tagged me in something. I thought it was a response to this. So it's the birth control bill. He says that it's going to create problems with the bill, but it's mostly virtue signaling. It says, but the private right of action section, that's a big problem with the ADA and other laws. This is a bad bill. A no vote was the right vote. We deserve better. And then he tagged us in this because we're talking about it right now. So
cool.
Thanks, Rich. And again, I'm that one. I'm a little bit less familiar with. I'm mostly prepared with the marriage bill, and I'm generally a little bit more uncomfortable with that. And I know there are like the devil's always in the details about like what does the government say it can now interfere with in your medical practices by saying you have a right to something. And again, I generally think you do have the right to something, but they always mean it in a funny way. Like when it comes to the, they always mean it in a funny way. And do you mean like you're not going to interfere with me doing an activity, or do you mean that you're going to compel the labor of others to fund my activity? Or
yeah.
It's a funny way of saying, but whenever you see someone saying like, I have a right to healthcare, I'm like, do you mean the government shouldn't restrict you from accessing healthcare, or do you mean that I should pay for your healthcare? Because those are two different things.
Those are two different things. And it's hard, man, because I want people to be able to get medical treatment. I don't like what the government's done. I do see the benefits of a competitive market. I do see the problems with the centralized planning that we see in the medical profession now, that we see in our school systems now. So we need a better balance. We need to achieve a better balance, and we're not there. We're not even close.
I mean, like the medical system as well. It's like we have somehow created a system that is very expensive on individuals and families, while also being almost as bureaucratic as like the socialized systems and like goofy patchwork like levels of like rights to access certain services across various states and municipalities. It's wild. Like again, we've somehow created like the worst of all worlds in the United States healthcare system.
It was inevitable, man. It was inevitable because we look at the people. I posted a meme on my Freedom Variant page. I'm going to try to quote it right now. There's an actual name for the kind of the anarchy that we're discussing right now, and let's see if it comes up here pretty quick. A cacistocracy, a state or country run by the worst, least qualified, or most unscrupulous citizens. I think we're pretty close. Like, so, and look, guys, let's talk about the news for a second, okay? AOC pretending to get handcuffed at an abortion rally, and then the right fires back with, that's an insurrection. And I'm like, you guys are all crazy, man. Like, your hypocrisy level is off the charts. Like the dunks that they try to pull on each other just drive me nuts. AOC pretending to be handcuffed drove me crazy. I don't see any value in that kind of behavior. I see value in her advocating for her pro-abortion stances. I get that. But to pretend to be handcuffed, to put on a display like that, it's literal clown world that we live in. And then for the right to just come back with what they were coming back with on it is like, that's an insurrection too. Like, it's like you're validating this discussion of insurrection. I don't think January 6th was an insurrection. I'm sorry if people do, but like, if we don't at some point wake up from this emotional spell that they've cast over us, we're going to be in big trouble.
Yeah. No,
I ranted there. Sorry.
No, you did. No, it's fine. It's fine.
A lot. Sorry, guys.
We got lots of rants. It's how it goes. This is what Thursday shows usually look like, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you haven't had the benefit of a restful weekend like you did on the Sunday show.
That's true. Coming up this weekend, I got a guy from Indiana that's going to do a live show with me at 9:00 in the morning. Just a local guy running for office. He's got great ideas about cybersecurity, and he wants to bring them to his hometown. He's working really hard to get elected. He's been on the Larry Sharp show. He wants to come on with me. I'm really looking forward to talking to him. So Saturday morning, 9:00, the Freedom Variant has Tommy Brown III, cyber detective, on.
All right.
He's actually he's like a town worker, and he wants to be a town supervisor. And guys, that's inspirational to me, because that is in part how we change these systems is people who believe in freedom and liberty take those steps.
100%. All right. So should we do like fake news now?
I mean, I've got one that I want to test you on.
All right.
See if you think it's fake news or real news.
Go ahead.
All right. Okay. Farmers' soil underwear for better crop health. Farmers soil underwear for better crop health. Do you think that's real news or fake?
I think that is a newspaper being clever with their headline and possibly a protest being clever with their actions.
It's I think.
Yeah. So I'm gonna say it's real. Let's go with that.
It's real news, but you're thinking it's a clever expression?
Yes.
Okay. It's real news, and they're using real underwear, all right? Men's tighty whities are helping Delaware farmers keep their crops in check. The farmers have found a new use for cotton briefs by burying them under the soil. The Sussex Conservation District planted several pairs of 100% cotton underwear in farm fields in Bethel and Georgetown. Just shy of 60 days later, pretty much all that's left of the underwear is elastic waistbands. So,
it didn't grow into anything. It's probably like, a good sign.
Some of my friends take fish, like their buddies will catch a fish that's somewhat undesirable. Nobody wants to eat it, like chain pickerel or something like that, and they'll put them in their garden, just like the Indians used to. And so that's a little bit like what's going on here. Basically, the 100% cotton, deteriorates into
I guess if it's organic, it can break down. Why not? Nothing's growing out of it. Hopefully not. If something's growing out of it, then something went wrong there. Yeah, why not? Why not? Leave it.
Tommy Brown. He's yep. Paula gives a shout out to Tommy. She follows Tommy Brown on Facebook. He's a good guy, and I saw him on Larry's show, and he wanted to come on with me, and we finally have an opportunity. We're going to do it Saturday at night.
Yeah. So one of the fake news items I was going to do is the AOC thing, which is it's funny. I have another one too, and what's funny though about the AOC thing though, it is kind of goofy, right? Like she putting her hands behind her back. Like I don't know if it's reflexive or like she expected. Like people are awkward when they're getting arrested during protests. Like I've seen it all the time, so they're just not sure what to do with themselves. But I don't know, it is goofy. I've seen it happen, and a lot of times it's weird. Like they'll put you in like shoestring handcuffs too. Friends who've gotten arrested at the Capitol. But she said she wasn't doing it. She just said that was her way of signaling that she wasn't going to like reach out or flail. But it's like, was anyone
signaling is the key word there
to do that? I don't know. Makes a good photo op. That's the important part.
Signaling is the key word there.
Yeah, and Pollock, I'm gonna, it apparently it's real news that Lee Zeldin got attacked. Yeah, no, he did. It was over in Fairport, or over by where I live. We talked about that at the top of the show, but yeah, no, he really did. Someone tried to attack him. He's fine though. Like
he's okay. He didn't get hurt.
A bunch of people jumped up, I guess. So we'll find out what actually happened at the event. But here's my actual headline. Tell me if it's real. Oregon health officials delayed a meeting because urgency is a white supremacy value.
Oh my God. I feel like I heard that on the news somewhere. Yeah, white supremacy is okay. It fits the current narrative, but I'm going to go with you. You made that up.
No, I wish I did make it up. It's right. Like they really did send this, and a bunch of people were like, what the heck are you talking about? It's like the email they sent out to to a bunch of folks who were supposed to be on this health Zoom call or whatever. So they sent it out. So thank you for your interest in attending this event, blah, 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 these things. We recognize that urgency is a white supremacy value that can get in the way of more intentional and thoughtful work. And we want to attend to this dynamic. Therefore, we will reach out at a later date to reschedule. Like, what a wild, like this from a few weeks ago, what a wild way to be like, yeah, like we don't have it together. And, if you make us feel bad about that, that's really your fault. Like that's.
Yeah.
You're just, you're just being a white supremacist. What? So don't buy it, including a bunch of, there's a bunch of doctors who are like, this is offensive. Like people who are, medical professionals who are, people of color. They're like, what? No, that's not. Stop it. That isn't like a free pass for people to not criticize you. This is dumb. Please.
Yeah.
knock it off.
All right, so let's deal with a potentially offensive comment from we don't get these all the time. Somebody named Demography Now. First of all, I just want to be clear. I am not a boomer. I want to be very clear about that. I am the first wave of Generation X by a month or two. But he's kind of tired of hearing boomers speak about anything of substance regarding the state of this country. They were asleep at the wheel while the U.S. got turned into North Mexico and New Africa. And look, bud, if you're going where I think you're fucking going, that kind of shit doesn't wash here. All right, it's not funny, it's not witty, it's not smart. Okay, this is not. That's garbage thinking. Change yourself. What do you think, Kevin?
Yeah,
you got any comments for Demography Now?
Yeah, no, get help, bro. No, but really, again, it's ridiculous, accusation that
it's garbage.
It's happening from like a demographic perspective, from a cultural perspective, and again, the United States is an interesting and cool experiment and unique in the world in that we have the ability to bring in and assimilate and borrow from and create new things out of a multitude of different cultures. And
it's one of the best things about it. My family's Irish and Italian. We mixed and matched. I just don't get. There still exists a certain amount of hate in this country that's baseless and basically manipulated. Again, you guys get played by the government. Okay, they tell you like the Republicans are bitching about the border and stuff like that. And look, we need a border, okay, but we need sane immigration policy. People are getting used by our government systems, and it's deliberate. And you decide to hate them because they're forced into lives of drugs and misery and sex trafficking and other bullshit. And that kind of shit should not wash. You should be better than that. You should see where the problem comes from, and you should fix it. And it's not that they're your enemy. It's that the government screws you up and plays with your brain.
Yeah, no,
that's the truth, bro.
Yeah, the problem is the state, right? And again, that gets people divided. And the questions always come up like, oh, well, what about the welfare system? People take from welfare. Okay, like even if that were true, like which it's not exactly true either. But even if that were true, like who's taking your money? It's not the immigrants taking your money.
No,
it's not the Mexicans. It's the government. The state is taking your money and giving it. Yeah, you don't like the state. Those folks are just trying to make a better life for themselves,
right? And there is
and live their lives and take care of their families just like anyone else, just like you or me.
There is a perceptual truth there, okay? Like that people perceive, and again, it's happening, right? Like they're bringing in immigrants and they're shipping them all over the country much to the chagrin of local officials and state officials, and that's problematic. But again, there's innocent victims here that we're talking about that are being used to play you and play upon your fear and your jealousy and your tendency to hate people. And that's a reality. Like, do better. Step outside that box, man. That's all I'm saying. Do it. You'll be happier. You'll feel better.
Yeah. I'm saying. Well said, Tim.
Thanks, man.
So
occasionally I get something right.
Yeah, every once in a while. All right. Do we have anything else? I know we're pushing an hour at 15.
Yeah, we had a heckler, a real heckler, man. Like we got to deal with somebody. And look, man, keep checking Kevin and I out. Check out Larry. Have the conversation. I'm telling you, you're wrong. We'll prove it to you over time that you're wrong. You're obviously smart enough to know things. Check it out. Think for yourself. Don't let the government manipulate you into hatred. Don't let David Hoggs display on the floor. Like, don't get manipulated by any of that crap. You'll be happier. I promise.
Yeah. All right. Well, on that note, I think we're going to wrap up the show, folks. Thanks again for listening today. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for all the comments.
Yeah.
Nice and not so nice. It's fine. Love comments. And
even the heckler. I love it. Thanks for being here, pal.
And so we'll be back. I'll be back on Monday doing the radio show. I'll be around, and on Tuesday I'll be on Wednesday, and then hopefully next Thursday we're going to be doing another show.
Saturday, guys, if you want to check me out, and then Tommy Brown. After that, I'm going to try to get my friend Brian LaRusso on, but we also have a very proactive youngish lady that's running for New York State Senate who wants to come on the show with me. I'm going to make some time for her. unless she did watch this show, it's like, I'm not hanging out with that crazy fool. But she's actually going around handing out those stickers of concealed carry welcome here, just to
nice
mess with the government. And I like that. That's a very positive, proactive step. Like, she's like, hey, would you like a sticker for your window in your business so people who are carrying can come in comfortably? Like, and they're going like hotcakes, man. People are snapping them up. And I think it's great that she's doing it. We have to pull people towards freedom. She's pushing the wheel towards freedom right now. I think it's great.
Yeah. No, awesome. Love it. So look forward to seeing that. All right. Thanks, folks. Have an awesome night. Take care.